All right, everyone. Well, it's time to get started. Hello and welcome to the Triangle Summit meeting. My name is Ginger Whatley and I will be moderating today's call. We have a great team of speakers today and we will return to their presentations in just a minute. But first, I'd like to go over the web conference instructions. Everyone will be on mute so that background noise does not become distracting for other participants. And to view today's presentations as the screens change live, please use the link that was sent to you in your email yesterday. Also, once in there, click anywhere on the page. You'll see a pop-up option with the option to make a comment. We want you to make comments. We want to get questions from you. So feel free to ask questions by clicking on any slide and we'll make sure that your questions are answered. If you want to test it now, please test it. Hit the pop-up screen and type in what is your favorite show that you have binge watched during the past year. I'm also looking for suggestions, so please type in a show that you've binge watched in the past year. That's a good suggestion for me. For the newer participants in the group, it might be useful to review some of the main benefits that you can take advantage of as a member at no additional charge. First, there are live monthly web conference meetings, one of which you are already dialed into. We hope you find these useful, and we have an excellent lineup, which you can see by going to our web schedule page. There's also another one tomorrow if you have time to dial in. Second, we record all of these meetings, so if you are traveling, stuck in another meeting, you can just log in at your leisure, and full archives of past meetings are available with a number of interesting topics. Also, we want you to get to know other members. By logging in, you can see their profiles, and we're glad to make any introductions if wished. This is a no-selling zone. Our members are looking to become outperformers and learn from each other. Also, if you're wrestling with any key issues or decisions, we strongly encourage you to reach out to other members, and our site makes it easy to post questions. Sometimes we find that the seniority and experience of your fellow members makes this the best possible forum to get advice from other members who have probably dealt with similar issues and can give you sound advice about what worked and what didn't. We're also generating executive summaries from each meeting with the key takeaway and learning nuggets so that you can reference them after the meeting and put them into action. Also, we know our members are very busy, so we started a service where we pick out the 6 most interesting articles among thousands and hundreds of sites to keep you abreast and make sure you don't miss out on any key learnings. And last, we also have a Book of the Month Club. This Book of the Month and it's a Book of the Month really summary, and you can either read or listen to these books as you commute. Each month, we'll be selecting the most interesting book and then summarizing the ideas so within minutes you can absorb the key takeaways. There are lots of other benefits, but we just wanted to highlight a few so you can keep a lookout for these each month. Well, so that takes care of all the housekeeping issues. And now it is time for our first keynote speaker, Allison Chandler. Allison, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
You sound great. So our first keynote speaker today is Allison Chandler. Allison is the Vice President of Compliance and Legal Affairs for Target RWE. So Allison, it's great to have you. We're excited to have you. So before we begin with your presentation, can you give us a quick self-introduction?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here today. I think a lot of my story is kind of woven into what I'm going to talk about today, so I won't go too much into anything that's in my bio. As Ginger mentioned, I am Vice President of Compliance and Legal Affairs at a clinical data company that is headquartered in Durham. And I'm going to be talking today about reviving and or fast-tracking your career.
All right. Well, I've pulled your slides up. Can you see your first slide in front of you?
I can't see it on here.
Hit refresh.
But I have it pulled up on my screen as well. So
okay, wonderful.
I should be good to go.
Okay. Well.
Okay.
So we are ready to have you. Just keep going, and whenever you're ready for me to hit next slide, just hit next slide. Or just tell me, next, please.
Okay. Okay.
Take it away.
Okay. Great. Thanks so much, Ginger. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Allison Chandler, and I am so excited to be speaking today for this great group of women leaders here in the Triangle. This is my first time to do something like this.
Line muted.
The workplace is a huge passion of mine. I feel very, very honored to getting to be doing it. I really wish that we could be in person to do this so that I could meet all of you, as I know that the Triangle is home to so many hardworking, supportive women. I've lived in Chapel Hill myself for almost 8 years now, having moved here with my husband for his medical residency at UNC, go Tar Heels. And then we just decided to stay put because this area was so great. We've really found North Carolina to be such an energetic, innovative, friendly place. And no doubt one of my favorite things about living here is that I've met some incredibly inspirational women who have encouraged me on my path. And I love that groups such as this have formed to create an even larger support and networking system. It's really important to support one another, but it's especially important right now during COVID. It just seems really tone deaf to not mention it right now, even though this is not so much about that as it is reviving and fast-tracking your career. But I think that it's something just to kind of talk about because it does go hand in hand. So next slide, please. So we need to recognize right now that there are obstacles to success, especially right now, and we just really need to give each other grace as women and to continue to support each other. So women right now have really become society's backup plan as a caregiver, as a teacher, domestic worker, as doers, so many things. So it's really caused far too many people to need to exit the paid workforce, in addition to the many women who have actually lost their jobs. And we just can't afford to lose that little bit of momentum that we've been gaining up until 2020. So if you can't, if you're here today and you feel stressed because maybe you have kids at home who are virtual learning, so you're afraid to go for that promotion that you want, or maybe you've been out of work, or you're in a job that you don't like, but you're afraid to start something new right now, let's just all of us here together take a deep breath and say, I'm enough. It may be hard right now, but I can take at least a little step every day towards the life and the career that I want. And it may just be that imagining what you would like to do, you may find that over time, those daydreams become more vivid until you are actually living that dream. So on the slide, I don't like to just talk so much reading of my slides, but I think that this does show some really stark, sad facts about 1 in 4 women contemplating downshifting their careers or leaving the workforce entirely. And it seems like a really easy thing to want to do when there's so many stressors. But I think that women, if we can really just support one another, and if maybe you have direct reports that are having a hard time right now, that they have kids that are virtual learning, that you give them some flexibility, that you make it visible at work to say it's okay to do certain things and still take that step forward in your career, then that can be really important for all of us. So I think that we can go to the next slide, and I can talk kind of more about my personal journey and why when I was sent a list of different topics that were suggested topics for today's conversation, I thought that I might have something that would be good to share with others, and hopefully if I share some advice from my own career journey, it can help some of you that are listening here today. So I just want to start out by saying I am by no means smarter, nicer, more organized, or anything at all more than anyone who's listening today. But there are certain strategies that I have relied upon over the past 4 years that have no doubt hastened my journey from managing contracts to my current role as vice president. So that's where on the slide I have this toast that was actually the toast of my daughter's first grade class last year, which is funny that they would have a class toast, but I love that. And they would say, never above you, never below you, always by your side. And that just goes to show that the best solution to women being successful is to work together, and we can hold up that heavy burden. And I hope that we can learn together from today's talk, and I look forward to hearing what everyone else has to say as well. So, sorry, to get back to my place. So exactly 4 years ago today, that my family and I were on a ski trip. And at this point, 4 years ago, I had been a stay-at-home mom for 4 years, which was no doubt a very challenging and fulfilling job in itself. But I've really been trying to ignore for some time the growing voice inside of my head saying that the time was right to go back to my career. So before pausing my career to be at home with my children, I had been Assistant General Counsel for the Oklahoma Corporation Commission, specializing in public utilities regulation, which sounds super sexy and exciting, I'm sure. But with a husband who was working all the time through residency and with 2 small children, it just seemed at the time I was kind of doing, quote, the right thing by staying home. And that was a little bit of a pressure that I felt from my family, from growing up with a stay-at-home mom myself. It just seemed like that was kind of the normal path. But that career break gave me real perspective. So I'm going to pause and say advance to the next slide so that we can go to the must-do number one for reviving or fast-tracking your career, and that is trust your intuition. Yes, intuition can play a huge role in your career. We so often hear people say trust your intuition, but what does it really mean, and how do you do that? If they say trust your intuition or maybe trust your gut, well, it's an understanding of something where there's no need to overthink it. You just know. It's kind of the ultimate act of trusting yourself. So it was a time in my life when I should have been really happy. I was getting to stay at home with my baby, something that so many women and men too would like to do. And yet I kept having that feeling that, well, being a mom was, and it really still is, the most important thing in the world to me. It wasn't the only thing for me. So one of my great hopes for womankind is that we can all just support each other in our decisions. Kids, no kids, married, single, working moms, stay-at-home moms. There's really a billion different paths that you can take. And, they're all valuable paths. And no two life experiences or circumstances or instincts are exactly alike. But in my case, my intuition was saying the time is now, and I knew it was right. If you listen to the advice of your own intuition, it will really guide you to know what is truly best for you. And, of course, having worked with data scientists and experts for long enough now to know that we need some stats for our discussion, I have on the slide a few concrete reasons why you should trust your intuition when you're looking for the next steps of your career. So most people, 88%, believe that intuition serves them well, and yet 76% scoff at the notion of relying upon it in the business world. Why? This is really an area where I think women can truly shine because we tend to have strong intuition. Trust yourself. Maybe it's not the same situation I was in when I knew it was time to look for a new job, but maybe it's knowing who at work is going to be a positive force in your life versus someone who drags you down, or knowing when to speak up on a certain topic, or when it's time to make that next move. These intuitive things are examples of just that micro step that you can take towards the next steps in your career. And that micro step is something that we can all be doing right now. Even during COVID, when there's so many pressures on us, we can be doing that little bit and listening to when the timing is right. Even Einstein himself said the only real valuable thing is intuition. So treat your inner voice as a valuable commodity. Intuition is like a muscle, and it really needs to be exercised by your feelings. You can't just stamp them out, as hard as that can sometimes be. I usually like to think that I am a rational person and that overthinking things is the cure, but that brain-heart connection is really the key to making the right decisions for ourselves that ultimately leads to happiness and success. So around that time that my intuition started talking to me about looking for a new job, in the fall of 2016, I had only breathed a word of that dream to my best friend, who's actually on this call today, which is super special to me. We would go running together, and we would talk about anything and everything to pass the miles. And in those conversations, my desire to not always be a stay-at-home mom surfaced. And saying them out loud made it all the more real. At some point that winter of 2016-17, when my family and I went to the best little independent bookshop out at Farrington Village, you know where that is, in Pittsburgh, where the staff writes these little handwritten recommendations. So you can walk around and you can look at all the books and you can read what the people who work at the bookstore thought about it. My eyes fell upon a book that was called Grit by Angela Duckworth. It wasn't the typical book that I would pick up to read for fun, but intuition, I suppose, drew me to it. The review that was written was glowing, and the book went home with me. So back to that ski trip that I mentioned 4 years ago, Grit went into my bag, and I started reading it cozy by the fire one night, and I didn't put it down. I am not exaggerating when I say this book changed my life. Next slide, please. So Grit, in general, is my must-have for reviving or fast-tracking your career. Get it, read it, be inspired by it, and take to heart everything that she has to say, because it's really, really fascinating. She is a psychologist, so the science is there. Her narratives about grit are really interesting and just draw you into her writing. She also has a TED Talk, if you're interested, that you can listen to if you don't want to read the book but want to get some more into what she has to say about it, which is also really good. So here's the gist of grit. Angela Duckworth shows that anyone that's striving to succeed, be it parents, students, educators, athletes, or business people, that the secret to outstanding achievement is not talent, but a special blend of passion and persistence that she calls grit. Her research has shown that it's not always the people with the highest IQ who succeed, but the grittiest people. How relieving is that? So while I recommend the book as one that deserves a spot in everyone's collection, here are some key takeaways. Next slide. High performance comes from routine, sometimes even mundane acts. It's about that focus. The book teaches us that those who can sustain those small routine acts required to complete a goal are the ones who become high performers. Goes back also to taking that micro step towards your goals. For me personally, this has meant reading countless articles, white papers, and regulations, and we know how boring those can be, about data privacy and all things related to clinical research in an effort to understand and be able to best advise my company on these topics. Being deliberate and honing in on that specific skill set that you need to succeed in your desired career by studying and then eventually doing the work day by day will yield results. And you'll get noticed as someone who can be relied upon to get the job done. By adding up thousands of those acts repeated over and over, we have the fuel we need to accomplish our goal. The experiences created in the state of flow can be reached far easier. Don't disregard all the little acts that you do every day, because they're more important than you think, and they add up over time. These little acts will make you extraordinary. Next slide. Grit is about stamina, not intensity. Duckworth says, learn to keep going, even when things are difficult, even when we have our doubts. At various points, in big ways and small, we get knocked down. If we stay down, grit loses. If we get up, grit prevails. So keep on getting back up. Next slide. All right. This is also about failure, and this goes hand in hand with grit. So the way you deal with failure really determines your success. It can be scary to think about failing, but we know that failure can also lead to us being better leaders. I love this. The only constant between success and failure is courage. As long as you have courage, you'll keep on getting back up on that horse and trying again. Also decide what not to do. We all want to be successful. Success is often about minimalism in the sense that it's what we choose not to do that's often more important than what we do. We have limited time and resources, so the way we funnel them into certain activities will determine our long-term outcome. How you spend your day is how you're going to spend your life. If scrolling through Instagram is something that allows you to wind down and you enjoy it, I'm not saying that it has to go. Just ask yourself if you're really happier at the end of a binge session and whether or not that could have been better utilized time. Next slide. So growth mindset versus fixed mindset is something that is really, really key. So this goes back to the first tenet of Angela Duckworth's work on success. It's not about how smart you are. It's about grit. It's about how hard you work. A fixed mindset person would say, well, I'm not good at X, or I'm not really that smart, so I can never do X. A growth mindset person would say, I'm not good at X yet, but if I work hard enough at it, I can do anything I put my mind to. That growth mindset will take you wherever you want to go, but you've really got to be willing to put in that work. And back to the failure, the way you deal with failure does determine your success. As long as you never stop finding ways to make your situation better, you'll succeed. It's the people who try a few different ways and then stop practicing or searching for a new way that fail. And dealing with failure is about taking ownership of your problem and making yourself responsible for solving it. At the same time, you can always ask others for a helping hand as long as you're taking the lead. Failure will never destroy you, and when you finally find some success, it never ends. Life is about constant improvement and striving for the top of that mountain. Even when you reach the top, there's a bigger mountain to try the next time around. The only constant between success and failure, again, is courage. Next slide. So So Butler also suggests in the book that you should be setting yourself a long-term goals, actually a few long-term goals, that you should be setting a long-term goal for your career and then also a personal one. For example, your career goal may be that you want to work for maybe a certain company, or you want to master certain core concepts, which will bring you more success at work. And a personal goal might be that you want to do more yoga and you want to work on that as a practice. So I put down the book and I started making goals. Goal number 1, go back to work. So to break that big goal down, I knew that I thought I wanted to be in the healthcare, pharma, CRO world, even if it meant learning the lingo of a whole different industry, because that industry offers so many opportunities here in the Triangle. So I started by tapping into my network. I was lucky enough to know some people already working in that industry, and so I went to one of them who worked for a large CRO, who helped me to take a look at what they were currently hiring for and gave me some pointers on what my best shot may be, considering that I had at that point a 4-year work gap, and I had no experience in that area. So the job was doing contracts in site startup, a considerable step-down role compared to what my job of 4 years ago was, but it didn't matter. I had a growth mindset, and I knew that it was a stepping point to bigger and better things. After the interview process and the job offer were complete, I was back in the office. To say that it was a huge adjustment is an understatement. I went from spending my days watching Paw Patrol and not needing to do anything but get a couple of toddlers out the door a few mornings a week for preschool to a full-time job. And anytime I thought that my brain had turned to mush so much that I couldn't do it, I thought, no, you can do this. Grit. I had never used Excel too much before this job, and I had to have my Gen Z coworkers who understood it teach it to me, but now I love it, and it's something that I've worked on over time and have used until I've reached mastery with it. So really now we're going to come to what I think is the third must-do for fast-tracking your career or reviving your career. Next slide, please. And this has to do with your attitude. It pays to be positive. The power of positive thinking, and thus a positive attitude, is seriously remarkable. If you think about it, you're in complete control of how you frame your day, and you have the ability to bring positivity to those around you. You can wake up every single morning and tell yourself to make it a great day, because really, why not? You don't have control of every little thing that happens to you, but you have complete control over how you frame that and how you think about it. So sometimes when people are trying to wrap their heads around this and the positive attitude, it may seem hard to get started on, and you may have to fake it until you make it a little bit, which in this situation makes total sense. And it really, you can fake it until you make it. You just keep on acting positive with those around you, and then eventually you'll find that it's coming easier and easier to you, and it becomes your default mode of operating. If you've ever had a grumpy coworker before, or anyone in your life that has just been kind of a non-positive person, you know how much that sour attitude can bring down everyone around them. Likewise, a positive coworker can encourage and rub off their can-do attitude on their whole team. So having a positive attitude, I want to mention, does not mean that you have to fall into that whole nice role because you're a woman. You can be assertive and positive. And enthusiasm for and positivity for what you're doing is infectious. No matter what role you're in, women are incredible. They can balance all they're doing and have to offer in the workplace. So positivity is just, I cannot say enough what a huge piece it can be in fast-tracking your career. It's funny, as an additional little piece of this, I was just earlier on the phone today with our Vice President of Finance here at Target RWE, and I told her that I was speaking to this group later today and talking about reviving and fast-tracking career. And she said, oh, well, you have done such a good job because you're so positive. And I thought that was funny that I told her, that's actually part of my talk today, is that I'm talking about people enjoy working with positive people, especially if positive people are gritty and know what they're doing. That is a just amazing combination for fast-tracking your career. So back to where I left off in that personal story. Before I knew it, another chance conversation with an acquaintance at a party led to another opportunity. Now, while it was indeed a chance opportunity that I ran into that acquaintance, I did know very well what she did, that she was a CEO of a clinical data startup. In fact, I had already let myself daydream some in the past about how eventually, if I learned enough at my current role at the CRO, I might have the opportunity to go work for her. But I really didn't expect this timing. It meant leaving my job managing contracts only 7 months after I started that job. But when you get the right opportunity, you sometimes have to take a leap of faith, and I did that, making a big change from the giant CRO world to a small healthcare startup, which was around 40 people when I first started there. Now we have well over 100 employees. My intuition was screaming yes at that moment that the new role was a possibility. Now, a short aside here to say that one good way to see how your intuition advises you regarding a new opportunity is to talk with other women at that company. Don't waste your time somewhere if there's a broken rung for women at that company. In my case, this company had a woman CEO and lots of women leadership, which told me all I needed to about how women were treated there. But it's really something that you can get a real feel for by talking to other women in your network. So I took my growth mindset, my positive attitude, and planned what my ideal career might look like at this new company. So I'll also mention that my role at that new company at the time was also to be a contracts and budgets manager. It involved learning all that I could about this new space, in this case, real-world evidence and data, which is a very promising area of research for providing valuable insights on the treatment of diseases in real-world settings versus randomized interventional clinical trials, and everything that touches us legally, FDA regulations, data privacy regulations, and so much more, so that I could make myself indispensable. I started there on January 4th, 2018, and after 1 year, I was Director of Legal Affairs. After 2 years, I was Senior Director of Legal Affairs, and then exactly 3 years later, to the day, I was promoted to Vice President. It's really been the ride of a lifetime, and I'm still working on those pillars of success every day. So growth mindset, positivity, intuition, and I think that is getting to be towards the end of summing this up. I will say advance to slide one so I can make one aside. When I first was asked about speaking today, my immediate thought was, I don't have anything to say, I just got lucky. And the more I thought about that, the more so many women, I think, say that they attribute their success to luck. In fact, when I started looking into it, it says that the research shows that 1/2 of all women, compared to 1/3 of all men, attribute their success to luck. But it's not luck, it's grit. So to sum it up, 1, use your intuition to know what career is right for you. Success is determined in many different ways. It doesn't mean that your job makes the most money or has the best title. It means that you're getting to live your best authentic life and balancing your career with what else is important to you and fills up your cup. Your gut will tell you if your goals are the best for you or not. 2, grit, grit, grit. If at first you don't succeed, try again. The best way to learn something well is to fail at first. Have that growth mindset and know that you can learn more, practice more, and you will eventually succeed. 3, don't forget how important your attitude is. Positive thoughts are contagious. And there's a direct correlation between positive attitude and good health, better relationships in and outside of work, and success. Advance the slide, please. So those just reiterate what I just said. So that's really it. My tips on how to revive or fast track your career. I did it, and you can too. Let's hope that we can continue to normalize these career paths that are not so traditionally linear. This is so helpful for women. We shouldn't be punished for being able to on and off-road in our careers. We need to prioritize caregiving sometimes or other important factions of our lives. Maybe you're back at school. There's a million different things that may cause work gaps to happen. I'm really encouraged as I've seen a lot of companies that are starting to offer internships for women who are wanting to return to the workforce, and there's just more acceptance of gaps on resumes in general. And I'll just leave you with this advice. I hope that all of you will take the time to think about, daydream, maybe write down what it is that you want, and envision what your life will look like if you do go back to work, if you decide you want to work maybe part-time, if you want to work full-time, if you want to work in a role with a lot of responsibility, etc. Have a plan, check in with yourself periodically, on if your career is headed in the right direction, manifestation works. I won't get into it much here today, but there's really something to that woo-woo, and I encourage you to look into it more, manifestation practices if you're interested. This manifestation, or the law of attraction, has been spoken about by many thought leaders who all agree that you can manifest things, but even though it's all about turning your dreams into a reality, it does require you to take those proactive steps towards whatever it is you desire. It won't just happen overnight while you sleep. You control a lot by your thoughts. Believe in yourself and the beauty of your dreams. Allow intuition to form what dreams to follow. Work as tirelessly as you can in the pursuit of your passion. Remember the importance of positivity, and you cannot fail. Or if you do, you'll learn from it, and eventually you will succeed on a very high level. That's all I have for today. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. I hope you got something out of it, and I'll open up the floor if there's any questions.
Line unmuted.
Well, that was absolutely wonderful. I really got a lot out of it. So, yeah, we do have a couple of questions. I'll start with one that came in through the chat before we asked for live questions, and this came from Anna. And Anna says, I could hear a bit of imposter syndrome sneaking up on you at times. I loved how you encouraged people to have a positive attitude. Are you a naturally positive person? I think it comes naturally for some, and some people really have to work on being positive.
Absolutely. I think that's probably best taken in two parts. I still suffer from imposter syndrome all the time. It's something that I think, unfortunately, women do suffer from much more so than men. I sometimes still feel like I'm faking it, and that people, if they knew who I really was, maybe they wouldn't think that I should be in the role that I'm in, or that maybe people at work think I know more than I do. And it's really something that you have to confront head on to say, no, that's not right. I have worked really, really hard, and I deserve to be where I am. And so that, yes, one, that's something I still have to work on all the time. Two, I am naturally a positive person, although I think that the more you work on it, the better you get at that positive attitude. It does come much more easily for some people than others. And that conversation I actually had with our VP of Finance earlier, she was reiterating the same thing. Just tell yourself, just tell your brain to be positive. And she was having a conversation with someone who was saying, but how do you do that? And she was saying, just tell yourself to be. Well, it seems much easier easier said than done. But I think that you can really just work on that. And maybe it's not the first way you would want to feel towards something. I still can get a bad case of the I don't want to on certain things. But then I'll try to put it in perspective with saying, okay, I can take a micro step toward this. I can put a positive spin on it. And it really makes a huge difference.
Oh, thank you. Well, this next question comes from Alyssa, and Alyssa says, congratulations on all your promotions. You're really making it sound easy, but I know you had some hiccups along the way. Any fun stories or advice about what happens when you can't go to that important meeting because you have to take the kids to the doctor?
Oh, my goodness, absolutely. You know, I think that's where it really comes into play, where you're working somewhere with people who are supportive. And for women that are in a role where they are very visible to others, and I am lucky enough to be in that now, I do take a very personal responsibility to tell other people that are at that C level, which I am not there yet, that they have forgotten, a lot of them. We have a male CEO now at our company and lots of other men that are chief executives at our company. They all have either no children or grown children who are in college. I think a lot of them have forgotten what it's like to have small children around. And, of course, none of them have gone through a situation like COVID where their kids are around all the time while they're trying to get work done, or much more than they would normally be. So, yes, I've had calls with our chief data and analytics officer with my 1-year-old at my feet screaming for my attention. And you just have to be real and let them know, hey, you're here, you're working, you're doing your best job that you can. But remind them, too, that for a lot of people right now, it's a very hard situation. And it's not that work's not getting done. It absolutely is. It's just that we need a little bit more empathy right now.
Yes, I agree. Empathy is very important. So I'm going to take a moment to see if anybody wants to ask a live question. For everyone out in the audience, you can hit 5-star, and that'll unmute your line, and I'll give somebody a minute to see if you want to ask a live question, because I know everyone has questions. Go ahead. All right, well, everyone's shy today.
That's okay.
So, and I do have somebody, if you raised your hand in the conference, I did unmute the person that raised their hand. So if you want to ask a question, you certainly can. But if not, we have one more question from the chat. And this comes from Karen. And Karen says, I'm a very positive person, but I tend to get down when I get bad feedback or a negative email. Any advice on how to pop myself out of that and not let it basically ruin my day?
Oh, yeah, I feel that so much. I think that negative feedback, as anyone who really takes into account what others think about them, and I think as women, and I know that I do, try to take into account what other people think about me or their feedback about me very, very personally, and I can be really sensitive to that as well. So I completely understand how that feels. And if you can try to frame it as, what was that person thinking when they gave that feedback to me? You know, there may be specific things that maybe that person's not a very positive person. Maybe you're reading it differently than they thought. Maybe they're just having a bad day. There's a lot of things that you don't want to internalize yourself about that you want to take it as, okay, what's the best way that I can look at this? And if there's feedback that can be taken and you can internalize that and improve upon something, just let that go to one of the things about failing, that you can learn from that and you will be able to move forward and do better. And I think it's really hard right now when so much of this is virtual and not face-to-face. It's hard to get direct feedback too, but it's really hard to get feedback in an email or a Teams chat or something where you can't really hear exactly what the person's, how they're saying things. And that can be a big part of, okay, well, what's really their intent with this? So if you get bad feedback, treat yourself kindly. Don't let it influence the way that you think about yourself. You know how you are on the inside. You know that you can do better. And I think you can just try to, you know, people talk a lot about adding a positive thing in with something that's bad. Treat yourself. Do something that makes yourself happy. Go for a walk. Get out there, exercise. It really can put kind of a fresh spin on your whole day if you just get up there, get away from your computer for a little bit, kind of reframe the situation, and just start fresh. And remember that one person's opinion is not what really matters.
Very well said, and great advice. Just get away from your computer for 5 minutes, even if you just go check the mail and just do something to just reset yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's all the questions that we have from our chat line. And before we move on to the next panelist, do you have any final words of wisdom for us?
Grit. Buy the book, internalize it, keep on working hard, and just thank you so much for having me.